Hello folks. Well, we have crossed the Cascades east. We're no longer in the lush rainforest, evergreen forest area. We're now in a different part of Washington, and the fun thing about today is we're going to take a look at a lesser known part of this state. Everyone knows about Seattle, or perhaps even the Olympic Peninsula, and all the fun little towns in between. But east of the Cascade Mountains lies a drier Washington, a more arid Washington. A Washington known for less people, more farmland, and a completely different way of life. And although it just seems like we're in another downtown of a large city, that doesn't give the visitor any understanding of a changed culture altogether. By the end of the video today, we will definitely get that understanding that we've changed biomes and culture and tradition, and it's a bit of a stretch to say we're still on the Pacific coast. We're close enough, it's closer to the Pacific than the Atlantic, but really we're closer in culture to the interior west than the Pacific coast. However, it is still fine to say that we're in the Pacific Northwest. Yeah. Well, let me just introduce you to today's destination. We are in the Palm Springs of Washington, as they call it. I don't know, I've never really been to Palm Springs, but if you've been to Palm Springs, you'll know that it's like an inland city. Almost like an oasis, sort of. And I guess that's what Yakima... Oh, I'm sorry. I've said Yakima my whole life, and just now am I realizing that I've been inaccurate the whole time. Yakima, Washington, is the place we're in right now. Well, we see a bunch of railroad tracks behind us, and these were the literal foundations upon which Yakima, as we know it today, stands. The city of Yakima was developed because it had easy access to the railroads. Yeah, this was what once was a depot for the Northern and Pacific Railroad. It still could be. I'm just not sure. I do know, though, that railroads were a big deal, much more of a big deal, maybe over a century ago. So that's why I'm highlighting these tracks. Now, the Northern Pacific Railroad almost sounds familiar, as if we've seen this railroad before. That's right, we have, when we were in Bismarck, North Dakota. Yeah, that's a long distance away from Washington. But this railroad was a great one. It stretched from Wisconsin to the aforementioned North Dakota to here in Washington. It was a huge deal. It was the primary railroad for the northern part of the country, and it would not serve enough justice to the city of Yakima if I did not include this. Because of the Northern Pacific Railroad's significance to the northern stretch of the country, and given that Yakima was one of those stops along the way, it prompted settlement and the construction of buildings here. And what you guys see here is the first part of Yakima. Beautifully preserved. The city of Yakima was officially incorporated into the U.S. officially as a city in the year 1886. And yeah, that's pretty recent for American history relative to all those East Coast cities, which are hundreds of years old. But hey, this is Washington State we're talking about, the northwestern frontier. For a long time, the state of Washington was only admitted in the year 1889, a few years after this city was first incorporated. Yeah, very, very, very recent, but at the same time, Yakima does have a treasure trove of history as we're walking through. This is history as we speak. The railroads, a great connector of the expansive country of America. This is what connected all those little towns for thousands of miles. And it's also fitting that the state of Washington has placed its Department of Agriculture in Yakima. As we'll learn later, the Yakima Valley is one of America's great agricultural regions, despite the relative aridity here. Benefiting from geographic fortune in many ways, Yakima now boasts an urban population of about 96,000 people. And the metro area, well, you gotta at least add 100,000 or more to that total. Yeah. For being out in the middle of the high deserts. Is it a desert yet? Have we gotten to the desert of Washington? We'll have to see. But for being in a relatively isolated part of Washington State, that's a large number. I don't know if you guys can see in the distance, but there's just mountains and plateaus surrounding this city, and it's a medium-sized city. It's by no means like a little small town. There's a downtown worth exploring, as we are doing right now, but it's a nice touch when you can get just outside of the city and then you're in the wilderness. Oh, Yakima clock, and that is definitely broken. That is not the time. Yeah, see, that's much better. You know, they have the Department of Agriculture here. I wonder if they have some state department or maybe even a municipal department here in Yakima for the maintenance of clocks, because literally time is of the essence. You know, speaking of time being of the essence, I do believe it's time for us to head to our next part of Yakima. Yeah. Fun little segue. Wow, that is a fast-flowing river. I don't know whether to call these rapids because they don't seem like rapids, it just seems like a fast, free-flowing river. So, this is the Yakima River. It's part of the greater Columbia River watershed. And so we're basically several miles upstream from when it meets the greater Columbia River. Yeah, everything is named after Yakima. We got Yakima the city, we got the Yakima Valley, we have the Yakima River. So where did all this Yakima terminology come from? It's from the Yakima people. Or are they the Yakima? Do they call themselves the Yakima or the Yakima? I don't know, I'm still trying to grapple with that lifelong inconsistency, that inaccuracy. Yeah, I should have learned better at a much earlier age to call this place Yakima its proper name today. These Yakima tribes, spelled Y-A-K-A-M-A, in contrast to the city Y-A-K-I-M-A, they weren't Salish people along the coast, as we described in Seattle and Olympia. No, these people were rather part of the proposed greater Plateau-Penutian group, and they lived around these parts. They used this Yakima River for all their needs. This was the life force of the people who lived around. And today, this river is the life force for all of the Yakima Valley's agricultural needs. This is what feeds not just the Columbia River, but this is what feeds the agricultural supply, what's grown here in the Yakima Valley. So if you're a real river enthusiast like yours truly, or you just want a proper way to spend a few hours outside, basking in the great outdoors, while at the same time within the limits of Yakima, the city, well, there's good news for you. Introducing the Yakima Greenway. And this is a great way to see the course of the river right beside it as you enjoy a little stroll. Maybe not on foot, you could bring your bike here. Yeah, beautiful way, great sights. Definitely recommend Yakima Greenway right by the Yakima River. So by now we have given ourselves a great introduction to this region's agricultural, as mentioned before. And then now we have just seen what nourishes the great amount of agriculture grown. I think it's time we finally get acquainted and intimate with Yakima's agriculture. Now this is a delightful apple. Do you want to know why the Yakima Valley is so important? Exhibit A. The Yakima Valley is one of the world's largest apple producing regions. 42% of America's apples come from this one region in America. In addition, about 75% of the country's hops, a very, very important ingredient in beer making, is also grown here. Just outside of Yakima is this place. Traveling through, in, or around the Yakima Valley, this place is a must-stop. Precision Fruits. It's got the best of all sorts of produce, not just apples, not just other temperate fruits, but they have a whole antique shop in the back. And might I say, the people who own this shop and the people who work here are mighty friendly. Truly the best apples I have eaten in a while. Forget New York City. Yakima is truly in my heart the Big Apple. Have you noticed in between takes that this apple has started from a hole and has gotten smaller and smaller and smaller? That's right, I can't help myself from taking bites of this delicious apple. Local apples from the Yakima Valley may just be the best apples in the country. No wonder they're shipped all over the country. And that's sort of what makes this region of Washington different from the coast. This is largely an agricultural community. Lots of farms stretching miles on end. And the culture that pervades in these farming communities is a lot more peaceful and tame. There's not the noise and hustle and bustle. And that's sort of what distinguishes the Yakima Valley and eastern Washington as a whole from western Washington and the Seattle area. I think the climate's a lot more hospitable for a slower paced environment. It's an agricultural community with agricultural values. Delightful when you can also eat the props. Yakima and its surrounding regions is so much of an agricultural community that it affects the way things are done. So there's a lot of foreign labor, I don't know if imported is the right word to say, but there's a lot of Spanish speakers from various Hispanic countries. So much so to the degree similar to the Southwest or West Texas or Southern California that for many, many businesses you can see English and Spanish on the same sign, as if English and Spanish are equally important languages to know in this area. All right, I think I got to the core of what I was meant to say here. Let's put a cap on the day at our final destination here around Yakima. Sorry to leave you guys in such suspense. Get it? Suspension bridge? We're really killing it with the puns today here in Yakima. But, yeah, Yakima is coming to an end today. And so is the state of Washington. That's right, we've explored quite a lot of the Evergreen State. And we end in a place where there's not as many evergreens as there were when we started. This is the Yakima River Canyon, and I don't know why it's so windy today. Maybe it's normal for this part of the state to be a lot windier than the west, but that's all right. Yeah, I bought another of these. They're good, they're tasty. I do really need to eat healthy. A lot of the time, you should see what I have off camera. Not the best stuff, but anyway, it's a great view of the Yakima River Canyon. This could be your typical landscape view of a river valley of the Olympia Plateau. Yeah, there's a big chunk of the Pacific Northwest that's not really coastal, but it's just arid shrubland. You see all these desert-like shrubs in the distance. It's really reminding me of our experience in Nevada. Or even maybe a better comparison, the Inland Empire of California. Remember, all the way back at the start of the Best of the Most West tour, we went to the Inland Empire. Yeah, I guess this is Washington's version, continuing the parallels between the Palm Springs and the Palm Springs of Washington right here. This Columbia River Plateau is also subject to the rain shadow effect. Yeah, as you travel east of the Cascade Mountains, which separate the wet and dry climates of Washington State, you can obviously see from our past experiences, Western Washington, very lush, very wet, gets plenty of rain. Maybe a little too much. But you go east of the Cascade Mountains and what this region receives is just the leftovers, the trickle effects of the rain shadow. In addition, the ocean will moderate coastal temperatures, but here inland, not so much. There's a wide range of diurnal temperatures, differences between the low temperature and the high temperature. There could be differences of up to 50, 60, 70 degrees on a given day here in the interior of Washington. Some pretty strong winds here. This is abnormal. Yeah, I'm really not used to these atypical windstorms. Very, very odd. I don't know, maybe the wind is telling me to speed up the ending of this video. Yeah, let's get that going. So yeah, Washington State, over and done with. I hope we saw a nice comparison between our past couple experiences in Washington State and today's experience. Washington is a state of two different worlds. Sadly, we only have time for one day in this world, but Oregon kind of has that same contrast too. And remember when I said at the end of our experiences in Oregon that we're not quite done with Oregon? Just like I pulled that fast one on you guys with California after I said, oh yeah, we're done with that. Well, yeah, we're going to Oregon one more day and we're gonna get to see what Eastern Oregon is like, similar to Eastern Washington. Who would have known? Two neighboring states with the same general climate patterns, the same general climate differences, east to west. All right, yeah, that's all I got, guys. Washington has come to a close. We're moving on towards the end of our Best of the Most West tour. The Coverage Project, getting as much as we can done and representing as many regions of these states as possible as we can on a budget. So yeah, ending our day on this great early evening overlooking the beautiful, picturesque Yakima River Canyon, enjoying some of America's best apples. More travels to come. I will see you at the next location.